welcome to the channel. I'm Jana from Purl Together, and it's cast on day for this lovely Lovella Shawl by Adrah O'Brien. So if you don't yet have your pattern, go and grab it. There's a link in the video description down below, and it's 30% off until the 18th using the code Purl Together, all lowercase and mashed together, one word. So go and get your pattern and cast on with us. There's a few things I want to tell you about that I noticed when I knitted through the pattern the first time. So before we get started, I want to give a shout out to some new patrons. So a big thank you to Cindy, Terry, Patty, Adrah, and Maureen. Thanks so much for supporting the channel. I couldn't keep bringing you these videos each and every week without your support. If you want to learn how to become a patron, head on over to patreon.com/purltogether, and you can see what benefits I offer for a small monthly pledge. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is gauge. Now you're thinking it's a shawl, so gauge isn't super important. Well, it's not super important for this purpose as far as having a garment that fits you, but it is important, especially if you're using one of those limited edition kits that was especially dyed for our group, because those are exactly 250 yards each for a total of 750. So you want to make sure that you're using the correct needle size that you need to get gauge so that you'll have enough yarn for each of the sections. So I thought, well, I usually size up, so I thought I was going to be Little Miss Smarty Pants and do what I usually do and size up one section, but then sure enough I ran out of this contrasting color before I was actually supposed to switch colors. I ended up having to rip back and re-knit this with the needle size that I got gauged with because I was stupid and I didn't swatch first. So swatch. Get gauge so that you make sure and have enough yarn. Now, if you have extra yarn and you want to make your shawl a little bit bigger, then by all means size up with your needles and do what makes you happy. But I'm just saying take note of that if you have a limited amount of yarn and you want to be careful. Okay. The second thing I want to point out is the central double decrease, which creates this lovely spine here. So this lovely well-defined spine that we have, it is not in the center, it's offset. But the central double decrease, you need to do it exactly the way the designer has written. Now the reason I know this is because my mom knitted this shawl with me the first time, and her spine looks way different than mine because she defaulted to the way she normally does a central double decrease, which is slightly different than the way the designer asks you to. So just be mindful of that and make sure that you do it the way the designer has written. Otherwise, your spine will look totally different. And maybe that's not a bad thing. It just won't look as crisply defined. So if you like that design feature, you'll want to follow the instructions to the T. Okay, the other thing I want to point out is if you find yourself getting off track with the stitch counts between the short side, the long side, and where the spine is, it might be helpful to make yourself a little worksheet or just make some columns on a piece of notebook paper. Notice in the increase section that after you complete each 4-row repeat, the short side will increase by just 1 stitch and the long side will increase by 2 stitches. So you might just make yourself a little some little columns, and you can make little check marks that say, like, at the end of repeat section number 1, the short side will have, you know, however many 5 stitches, then you'll have the center spine, and then your longer side should have 6 stitches. And then after the second repeat, the short side increases by 1, so that would be 6 stitches, and then the long side would increase by 2, so you'd have 8. Now, you know this because when you look at rows 1 through 4, at the end, there's little parentheses where the designer has put +2 or +1. And so you can easily make yourself a little chart if you'd like. I would also suggest doing that for the decrease section 1 and decrease section 2 as well. The only reason you might want to do that is so that if you do get off, you can track down where you went awry, and it's just easier to stay on track if you do this little cheater sheet for yourself. Okay, I've cast on the Lovella Shawl, and I'm just going to show you really quickly how to do the increases, which is just the knit front and back. A knit front and back is probably the most basic increase, where you just knit into the stitch like normal, wrap your yarn, and pull it through, but don't take it off the left-hand needle just yet. You're going to want to just swing that right-hand needle around to the back and knit into the back of it. So that's all it is you're knitting into the front, and then you're knitting into the back of the stitch. I'll show you that one more time. You're knitting into the front, and rather than taking it off, you're going to swing your right hand needle back around and knit into the back of that very same stitch. And that's all there is to it. Okay, I've done the first couple of rows of the very beginning of the pattern, so now we're going to add in color number 2. I do not tie it or do anything fancy. I'm just going to simply go in and begin knitting with this. We'll tighten everything up and weave in the ends later on, but for now I'm just going to begin knitting, and I'm going to leave myself a pretty good, 5 or 6 inch tail. So just start knitting with it, and if it gets loose and weird, you will want to pull, you want to tighten up the main color here at the bottom too, so just to keep that all together. So I just kind of trap everything right here and hang on to it until I get everything established. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that increase again and follow the instructions as they're written. I just wanted to make a note of that. When you're adding in that second color, you don't need to tie it or do anything special. We'll make sure it's woven in securely later on. Okay, the other thing I want to make note of here, as did the designer, is when you're beginning to knit with the other color, I like to make a decision right off the bat. Am I going to have the lighter color in the front and the darker color in the back so that my edge is consistent going all the way up the side of the shawl? So that's how I usually like to do it, the light in the front and the darker in the back. And I guess I remember that because light and front have the same number of letters and dark and back have 4 letters. I don't know. You do what works for you. But I've just always kind of done it that way. That way, the edge looks nice and you're consistent with how you're holding your yarn. So I'm going to hang on to the front of the light yarn. I kind of just go like that and hang on to it, and I make sure that the dark yarn's coming off the back. Now, when you start knitting with the other color, you want to make sure to keep your edge not sloppy loose, but relatively loose, because you don't want to tighten up this edge. Otherwise, the shawl will pucker when you try to block it. So you want things to be, loose, carrying this non-working yarn loosely up the edge. So I just wanted to make a note of that. And then I want to show you how the designer recommends that you do the central double decrease. Your central double decrease is going to occur 1 stitch before the center spine, and we know that's the center spine because it's the only one that's knitted. It doesn't have a purl. That's going to be knit all the way up. The designer would like for us to slip 2 stitches together knitwise. So you're going to go to the center one and slip these 2 knitwise, and then you're going to knit the next one and pass both of these together over the top. Now you'll notice I kind of pulled down and I tighten the stitch I'm pulling over, I tighten that up a little bit to make it easier. Okay, so that's the 2 that will lay together flat underneath that. I'll show you that again in just a moment. Okay, I have put a locking stitch marker as suggested by the pattern, but you know what? I don't tend to move it every round. I just put it on here, and that helps me see the column. If I set my knitting down or if things get shuffled around, or God forbid I would drop any stitches, that helps me to be able to determine where is my center spine. All right, so we're going to do that center double decrease again when we slip 2 together knitwise, knit the next stitch, and then take the 2 we slipped and lift them up and over. Now again, I tend to tighten that up a little bit just to make it easier to clear that, and then I loosen it again so I don't mess with my gauge. I do loosen that up just again. All right, and then I'm just going to carry on with the end of my row. Okay, and then I will point out on the wrong side, at the beginning of the increase section, when you're on the wrong side, row 2 of the increase section, when you're on the wrong side, you're going to knit to the marked stitch. Well, you know that this is the marked stitch even though it's a purl bump, because you can see that that's a bigger purl bump than the others, because that's where we lifted those 2 stitches over the 1. So, and you can also feel the marker on that column. So even if you're not moving your marker every single row, you can still tell if you're paying attention at all. You can tell what's going on and how that purl bump is twice the thickness that it normally would be. All right, I thought I'd show you what mine looks like real quick. You can see the crispness of this center spine. I really enjoy that. And also the importance of carrying your yarn up loosely up the edge. And you can see I've kept the lighter color in the front most of, the whole way up. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake on there. Or you could twist them together in a pattern. If you wanted to do that every single time, you do what works best for you. So I am quite a ways into this, and I'm loving the squishiness of the fabric. I did choose to omit the marker. I just felt it was kind of annoying and unnecessary, but if you're a beginner knitter, you might find that super helpful. I omitted the marker because you can clearly see where this spine is and then where you need to stop when you're knitting one stitch before the spine. And then on the opposite side, when you're knitting back, you can tell where the spine is, one, because you can feel it on this reverse side. You can feel it with your fingers, but also you can tell where that double decrease was because you can see the extra strands there, and that's where you would purl on your way back, as you can tell that I did on the wrong side. Okay, you're on your way. I can't wait to see your progress pictures, particularly tomorrow is Work in Progress Wednesday. Show me a picture in the Facebook or the Ravelry group. I would love to see everyone's color choices as well. In the next couple of days, I'll be posting some details about how you can participate in the prize giveaways, whether you're on Ravelry or not. Some people are choosing not to use Ravelry, and that's fine. You can participate in this regardless of whether you're on Facebook. I'll be having posts on Instagram, so just watch for posts. I'll post on all my social media channels, and you'll see how we're going to work this. So, all right, thank you so much for watching. Click like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.